Ingethel's writhing dance came to an end. The maiden was bathed in sweat, her hair in greasy ringlets, and her body shining in the firelight as if beaded with pearls. In her hands, she still gripped her wooden staff, the head carved in a curving crescent moon. A tattooed god talker stood before each of the occupied spears. Blood from the slaughtered victims gathered into crude clay bowls that were clutched in white-knuckled hands. As Ingethel approached each in turn, the shaman would mark her flesh with a spiraling symbol, tracing blood onto her body with a fingertip. It was impossible to miss the significance. They were drawing the eye on her. "Incredible," said Lorgar. He looked pained, the veins in his temples swollen and pulsing. "I know this ritual," Safin said. "I know it from the old books." "Yes." The Primarch gave a strained smile. "This is an echo of an ancient Caucasian ceremony. King priest, the rulers of old, were appointed like this. The maidens dance, the blood sacrifices, the constellations inked upon her flesh. All of it. Corphoron would know it, as would Erebus. Both of them will have seen it before with their own eyes, performed by the Covenant in the years before my arrival on Colchis." Argel Tal had considered their culture far beyond such decadence. Lorgar must have picked up on his disgusted thought because the Primarch turned to him with a sharp glance. "I do not perceive this as beautiful, Argel Tal. Merely necessary. You believe we have progressed past such superstition. I remind you that not all change is for the better. Buildings erode, flesh weakens, memories fade. These are all part of time's progression, and all would be reverse if a way could be found to do so. We are here to seek evidence for the existence of gods, sire. No gods worthy of worship could demand this of their followers." Lorgar turned his back to the ceremony, massaging his temples. "Those, my son, are the wisest words anyone has spoken since we found this world. The answers I am finding have dismayed me. Torture, human sacrifice." The Primarch's features drew into a slow wince. "Forgive me," I ramble. "My mind aches. I wish they would stop laughing." The cavern echoed with the thunder of drums, and the air trembled with monotone chanting from the hundreds of human throats. "No one is laughing, sire." Lorgar turned a pitying smile on his son. "Yes, they are. You'll see. It will not be long now." Ingethel came to the last god talker. The shaman anointed her with Vendatha's blood, outlining the serrated sun constellation on her bare stomach. With this last deed done, the maiden made her way back to the center of the platform. There she stood, arms reaching out from her sides, head thrown back, crucified upon the very air. The drumming intensified. a dragon's heartbeat thudding harder and faster as it slipped from its rhythm. The chanting became shouted laments, with hands and faces raised to a rocking ceiling. Inga Thel's bare feet slowly left the ground. Blood was running down her legs in staining trails, dripping from them. Every single one screamed. The captain's helm dimmed its audio receptors to compensate, but it made no difference. Lorgar closed his eyes, fingertips still at his temples. Here it comes. Well, that was so dramatic that it knocked my camera over. I was a little bit too into it there for a second. But hey, friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. And it's the holiday season with a whoop-de-doo, a dickory-dock, gonna draw a circle and dot on your stomach for the eye of terror. That is not how that song goes, but that was pretty good for impromptu, wasn't it? So we pick up from our story last week, where we left off. Lorgar, the Aurelian, the bearer of the word, has committed a great sin against his father's empire. After being censured for daring to call the emperor a god, for daring to worship what he perceived to be divine, for daring to try to be his most loyal, devoted son through the act of worship and spreading the word of the imperial throne, Lorgar is punished. Because in the emperor's imperium, there is no place for religion. There is no place for dutiful worship of that which is ethereal, esoteric, unknown to humans. There is no place for tampering with the unfamiliar spirits, because the emperor, being the longest lived known human, knows the dangers of religion run rampant. And Lorgar must be made an example of. But in his fury at being cast aside, our Lorgar has found a place for his worship. The denizens of chaos are more than appeasing to receive the will and worship of a newly devoted servant. Now, one thing I did neglect to mention last week, and I know somebody's going to comment on it. Maybe, I don't know. So far, no one has. But the Mechanicum. That's kind of the religious enigma in the Warhammer universe. Now, we're not talking about the alien races here. We know the Grots worship the Gork and Mork. I have to laugh because just the Grots and the Orcs, just, they're hilarious. If you ever just want to read funny Warhammer novels, get into the Orc War. Just hilarity to be had. But amongst the humans and the human races and those who are close enough evolution-wise to still be called human, we don't do that here. No religion allowed, unless you're the Mechanicum. So I can kind of see where Lorgar's frustration comes. In Lorgar's culture that he was raised in after being cast from his incubation chamber on Terra in the Himalayan mountains, in the Emperor's secret laboratories where he was raising his genetic sons. I have spent way too much time in Warhammer. But he was raised in a world that believed in religious worship. They found the purest form of themselves in religious devotion. When I say religious devotion, what I mean is a system of ritual and belief that created places in society for everyone to exist and everyone to have a purpose and something to look up to and towards, that should they perish before they intend to, if they adhere to all of the tenets of what they believe, well then a beautiful afterlife awaits. I think you can kind of point to all religions having that kind of belief there, but that's specifically what we're talking about. And because Lorgar is one who is predisposed to religion, when he meets the emperor, he doesn't just see him as his father like his brothers did. He sees him as God. He's like, not a God, God. He sees him as God, God. Like the God. The rest of the gods ain't God. This the one, you know? And I'm sure the emperor sensed that when he first met him, but then there's the Mechanicum. Because that's where all the tech in, at least for the humans, comes from in the Warhammer universe. Out there on Mars, the Mechanicum and all their building and doing and teching, they worship the machine god. They believe that every machine is imbued with the spirit of the machine god. And they don't seek to create technology. They pull from the 40,000, 30,000 years of human history and uncover those technologies that have been blessed by the machine god. Their research is not to create. Their research is to resurrect that which has already been created and or lost to the annals of time. So the Mechanicum is allowed to have their religion, but the Mechanicum are the ones who are producing all of the means of war for everyone. So if I'm Lorgar, I'm mad. They get to have a god and I don't get to have a god, which seems petty. But if you're not someone who comes from a religious background, or maybe someone who's had a religious upbringing, you're like, not that today. Sometimes it can be hard to understand why that matters to people, but systems of belief become super ingrained in societies and in cultures. And I said it in the last reading of this. The reason I'm reading this, during Christmas, one, it's red and green, so that makes it a Christmas story. But two, it's such an interesting discussion to think about how religion has infused itself into so many facets of society where we don't even realize it's there. And not just Judeo-Christian beliefs, but depending on where you are on the planet, you are going to see the breadcrumbs of a religion or a faith or a system of belief sprinkled throughout society. I can speak very well to how that shows up in America, but I'm biased. I'm from here. Let's talk about it in kind of a sister type of book that I like to read. As you all know, I am a fan of the books by female Asian authors about the stories of women in Asia, particularly because they are so just magnificent in the breadth and depth of what these women throughout history have had to go through in order to have a place in society, reading how they've learned how to either band together or protect themselves, figuring out how they can still use their skills and their knowledge to help one another, just figuring out how do I make a way in a society that wasn't set up for me to be my most successful. And we're talking about, the ancient world here, pre-now. And there are still places in the world where the subjugation of the uneducated or females or, you're too poor, that still happens. We're all very well aware of it. But specifically this type of story, and even more pointed, ancient China. I find ancient China so fascinating because it's a type of thinking system that is foreign to me as someone born in modern America. In my culture, me. Me all the time, me. It's all about me. Like, what can I do for me to make me the best? I mean, there are books out there called Live Your Best Life, Your Best Life Now. What do you want to do? Find your purpose. And that's not how the other side of the planet evolved their society. If you know anything about Confucian culture, the purpose of Confucianism was to introduce a social philosophy to unite the people. Because once upon a time, before China was what we recognize as China today, it was a bunch of feudal kingdoms out doing the most. That is the short version of that. They were doing the most. And when Yongle, the first Chinese emperor, actually united the lands through war, but united all of the lands and created the land space that we now recognize as China, one of the first things that was done was figure out how do we tell people and figure out a way for them to accept where they're supposed to be in society without us having to throw it down on them. Because it's easier to rule people who are going along to get along versus forcing them. Like, you got two options. You make the people listen to you, or you make them want to listen to you. You make it feel like a choice. Hence Confucianism, Taoism, and others. But Confucianism definitely bubbled up to the top. And what it allowed for was a system of rules and ways of being that taught people how to show up in society. If you were a male and the first son and you were born to a particular strata of society, here's what you need to do and be. Here's what you have the rights to. If you don't do and be these things, you cannot have these other things. Pretty cut and dry. If you are born the third daughter to a farmer in blah, well, that sucks to be you, but here's how you show up in society. Here's what's expected of you. And if you want your fortunes to change, here are the things you need to do to appease the universe so that maybe you have a different fortune. It gave everybody a set of standards, and over time, as it worked its way into society, everyone just was okay with it. That's just how things ran. Not a judgment call, just an observation of what was. We evaluate things within the context in which they're created. We try not to view it through the lens of our own lived experience, because every human has a unique lived experience. And that's where the emperor failed. Because with all of the observations the emperor made in his 30, 40, 50,000 years of life, we don't know how long he lived, but a while, even though he saw the harm that religion could do, he also didn't look at the beauty of what it could create. As many weird things came out of Confucianism, there were also some incredible things that came out of it as well. One, Confucianism provided a very interesting philosophy of how to rule people. Now, when it comes to philosophies and religion, there's always going to be people who take that and do the most with it. We're going to take that and put it over here for a second, just over there. We know that exists. Let's talk about what can come when things are used correctly. One of the things that would happen, especially for women, if people were adhering to Confucianism correctly, was women had protection. You're born a girl, your father has a duty to protect this girl, because out there beyond the house is a dangerous world. That was part of what Young Lu was trying to resolve. Like, people out here doing the words I can't say and other words I can't say, and we got to protect our girls, because you can't have no more sons if there are no women. If the women out there being, okay. So the fathers and the brothers now bring the women into a place that is closed and protected. In fact, let's not even have them on the ground floor of the house. The men who can protect the home, should there be an intruder, should there be a marauding force come into their village or their home, they can fight off at the door, and the women are upstairs in their protected chambers. Did it go overboard at some point? Absolutely, but that was the basis for a lot of that. Women and children were used as currency. And if you wanted to protect your wife, who was giving you sons, because men can't have sons on their own, if you wanted to protect your daughters, because even though she might be a useless branch on the family tree, if she marries the right person, it can elevate the whole family. You get your daughter into the palace and she has a baby for the emperor, and it turns out to be a boy, everyone's rich all of a sudden. That useless branch just became a branch of gold at that point. So Confucianism called for the men to protect the women, to keep them closed and close. Confucianism also called that men stand up, rise up, and provide. If you're going to be out in the scary world because you have the privilege of being born male, well, guess what? You got to work. And you gonna work, and if you think you're good enough to have another wife and more kids, you better do what it takes to take care of all of them. You want a wife and some concubines, you better provide for all them wives and concubines. You want 15 kids, you better provide for all 15 of those children. You better make sure that you give them a life worthy of someone who thinks they've lived up to the standard. And if you didn't live up to the standard and you became something that drained society or embarrassed the family, embarrassed the imperial monarchy, it wasn't going to be good for you at all. Very unforgiving society when it came to that. But it created stability in society where there had not been stability before. It also kept people from guessing as to what they should do with their lives. I cannot, as someone who works with a lot of young people, I cannot tell you how much it breaks my heart that sometime between 14 and 18 young people in our culture just freak out. What am I supposed to do with my life? Like, you got 80 years to be grown. Settle down. You got time to figure it out. We got to quit being so hard on our youths. Okay? But in ancient Confucian society, it was predetermined. You a girl, you're going to be a wife, you're going to be a daughter-in-law, you're going to be a mother, you're going to be a head woman of a household someday, should you be lucky enough to be the first wife of the first son. There's your path in life. You don't have to guess anymore. Which, to Western ideology, that just sounds like, well, you're going to choose for me? But in a society that was scattered, disjointed, and without purpose at one point, to be given purpose and a goal could be viewed as comforting. For the man, where he was born into, told him what he could do with his life, how far he could climb, where he could lift his family into. But the problem with lifting up is, the higher you go, the longer the fall back down to earth. And we also have to recognize, bringing it back into Western culture, which I'm from, religious organizations, all of them, not just the one I belong to, but all of them, tend to be rather charitable. A lot of them, feeding the poor, clothing the naked, taking care of the sick. A lot of that comes from religious and ideological organizations. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So there is good there. And I think the emperor, because he was so long-lived and had the longest memory, the truth is, it's evidence of how human the emperor of mankind really was. Because the way our brains work, the way humans work, is we very rarely remember information. What gets us to remember things is the way it makes us feel. People will forget what you said all day. They'll forget what you did. What they will not forget is how you made them feel. And the more intense an emotion, the more we feel it. And love and hate produce the same kind of intensity. And even though the emperor may have experienced some things through human religion and philosophy that were beautiful and good, he experienced a lot that was bad. And he rejected it outright, because that was a stronger emotional memory than any of the positives. But we're just going to let Mars do whatever they want, because nobody gets bullets and guns and ships and titans if we upset the mechanicum. That's just how society, that's like one of the truest things that's ever been written in fiction. All y'all have to obey my rule. Accept them, because that's where the munitions come from. But the emperor has rejected Lorgar's worship. He has rejected the idea of becoming God, which that's a discussion for another day on whether or not the emperor intended that his end game was to be worshipped, because it ends up happening. Spoiler warning, 10,000 years later. I've actually got back there in my my bookcase, which you'll actually be able to see when I rearrange my office next week. They've got the first omnibus out of the Siege of Terra now, so I'm super excited to dig into that in a couple of months, because I've got other books ahead of that, but Fabius Bile comes first. Got to finish that one first. The emperor made a grave error in dealing with Lorgar. Whether a human will admit it or not, we have a need for purpose and belonging that a lot of times can be fulfilled through religious practice. It's just part of our nature. We are always programmed to seek beyond ourselves. What else? What if? What else? What if? That's how we are. And it's a beautiful thing. It's created some amazing bits of culture. If you ever get a chance to travel, I've gotten to travel a lot, and I have a lot more traveling I want to do. Like, I've never been in an ancient mosque, and there are some out there that I want to see. They are absolutely incredible. The architecture that was produced. One of the things I love when I travel is just to go look at old churches. Have you ever just stopped and looked at an old Gothic church and just gone, how did they build that? Or if you've made it to Asia, especially throughout Korea and China and parts of Japan, a lot of those old palaces and temples, they built them without a single nail. Those are crafts that had now been lost to history, but they were a product of religious devotion to build something as pure as it could be in worship of the divine. That is absolutely amazing. And another art that I discovered is the Hindi sand art. Have you seen sand paintings? A temporary art where you take sand and make the most beautiful mosaics out of it. And then it's gone. Go look it up. I forget the name of it because I'm a little excited right now, but religion has produced some amazing things. Folklore. You just want to get lost in stories? Read religious folklore. My God, today. I don't know what they were drinking in Norway, but they wrote the hell out of some stories. And it's just like, what do y'all think Thor is based on? You know? And religion has produced some beautiful things. And sometimes it pains me when people reject religion. And this is just, a personal aside, because there is a lot of beauty to be found there. But also as a human who's experienced and seen a lot, I recognize why people would reject religion in any form. Because as beautiful as some parts of it might be, there has been a lot of harm done in the name of religion. And we talked about that in the last look at the first Heretic. But the Emperor handled Lorgar wrong. He had so much built up resentment to the things he had seen over thousands of years of human history, and he basically vomited that onto Lorgar and made him the object of his anger. He took it out on him, and he took it out on him in a way to warn his other sons, don't be that guy. You be this guy, this is you next. I'll bomb your world. I'll blow your perfect city off the planet. I'll blow you off the planet. And half of his sons still betrayed him. Because Lorgar had found his purpose in worship and in the divine, and then what he thought was divine rejected him. And there was chaos. It happens in regular life. What if a kid doesn't turn out exactly like the rest of their family, and the family determines they are the black sheep? And then they become what everybody thought they were. Funny how self-fulfilling prophecies work. Or if somebody's always told, you're not this, you aren't that, you're unattractive, you're not smart, you'll never amount to anything. And then guess what? They grow up not to amount to anything or applying themselves or finding their talents. The Emperor created Lorgar. There was a better way to handle it. There was another discussion that could have been had. But the Emperor just jumped the shark and went straight to, you're done. And he created his own downfall in that moment. Lorgar found a place for his worship, and it was in the Chaos Gods. It went so far that when the Emperor sent his own guards, the Custodes, to check up on Lorgar and see if he was acting right, they kidnapped him and killed him and used him in their human sacrifice. And then Lorgar begins becoming the thing he hates. Where we've caught up to is now the revelation of just how deep heresy has intertwined itself into the blood of this legion. The word bearers are completely infected with chaos. Through their leader, they let something into themselves that has a bloodlust and a hunger. But their devotion to their Primarch supersedes their common sense. Argel Tal, in the middle of this crazy, I just read y'all a scene about basically human sacrifice, looks at his Primarch and says, are we really doing this? This is what we're doing now. Are you sure? And Lorgar says, hey, it is what it is. I would reverse what religion means to us if I could. But I can't. These are things that happened long before I got here, and they'll keep happening long after I'm gone. And if this is what it takes for me to seize that power of oneness that I've always wanted, for me to feel special the way that I truly feel that I'm special, if this is what it takes to pour out this divine message on the people, well then so be it. And we've all heard that before. And this is the part where a little of me sides with the Emperor. He has seen how people have used religion to conquer, enslave, and subject people, to take advantage of people. And that's what he was trying to avoid. Although, servitors exist in this universe. That's a whole other discussion for another day. But Lorgar becomes everything he hates. The Emperor becomes everything he hates, because neither side is willing to have real conversation with each other and understand each other and come to a different type of conclusion. And what a lesson to come out of fiction. How might the story of the Horus Heresy been? Which it couldn't be, otherwise we wouldn't have all these books, but humor me. How might the story have ended if father and son had simply had a conversation and been open and candid with each other and not looked at each other through the lens of judgment, but through the lens of compassion and caring and wanting to understand? If you hear nothing else during this holiday season, where there are so many holidays happening, I'm a Christian. I celebrate Christmas, but I'll be honest, I'm a Christian that looks at Christmas as a secular holiday because capitalism going to capital, you know. But I also recognize that right now, when I'm recording this, Hanukkah is happening. And my religion is birthed out of Judeo-Christian values and Judeo-Christian beliefs. I also recognize, I believe this year, coming year in March, is when Ramadan is happening. We acknowledge that. It's not my religion, but I can look and respect everyone's right to believe. And in my martial arts school, for a few years, we actually had a father and his two sons, Muslim family, and they disappeared for a month. And everyone was like, where'd they go? And I was like, it's Ramadan, you idiots. They haven't eaten all day. Why would they come and work out in Taekwondo when they haven't eaten for the past 14 hours? And everybody went, oh, learn about people. Or if you're someone who manages a team and your teammates might come from different backgrounds, you know, be okay with asking them, hey, what are those holidays that are important to you? What are those times that matter to you? Or if they're not religious, hey, you know, I know that the people over here are taking their holidays off. Is there a special time of year to you that we might need to talk to HR to make sure that you can get that time? And then it's funny what happens when we're curious about other people, when we're open to conversation, when we choose to care rather than accuse, rather than judge. People will have conversation. We can connect. We can learn about each other. And we can make the world better through doing that. I would far prefer to be curious about things outside of myself than assume that I know it all and have it all together, because I certainly don't. Neither do you. The Emperor's hubris made him believe he knew it all, that he had it all together. He unwittingly drove his son to chaos. You handed the denizens of chaos a demigod. What did you think was gonna happen? A kid who can't find love and support in their own family, and they turn to a gang, substance abuse, the streets. We do it to our own. And then we're shocked that it happened. We can do better. What an amazing lesson from some military science fiction. If only they had had a conversation, there's a lot that may not have happened. But we'll discuss that next week when we conclude this portion of our story. But let's catch up with our friends in the sacrificial chamber during this week before Christmas. Its arrival was heralded first by the reek of blood. Unbelievably potent, as rich and sour as spoiled wine, it flooded Argyltal's senses with enough violence to make him gag. Zaphon turned away, and Lorgar's eyes remained closed. Argyltal alone saw what happened next. Ingathel risen above the ground in weightless crucifixion, died dozens of deaths in mere moments. Invisible forces excoriated her, flaying her skin away in ragged strips, letting them fall with wet slaps onto the stone below. Blood flowed from her mouth, her eyes, her ears, and nose, from every entrance and exit of her body. She endured this for a handful of seconds, until what remained of her simply ruptured. Her musculature burst, showering the Primarch and his sons with human meat and lifeblood. Her skeleton, still articulated, remained before them for a moment more, only to splinter and shatter at the sound of smashing pottery. Bone chips cracked off Argyltal's armor, clacking like hailstones. The maiden's staff clattered to the ground. Lorgar, said the creature, taking form amidst the dead girl's wreckage. Lorgar placed the quill on the parchment and closed his eyes, a reflection of that moment in the cavern. Months ago, to Argyltal, only a handful of nights ago, to the Primarch himself. I curse the truth we have discovered, he confessed. I curse the fact that we have reached the edge of reality, only for hatred and damnation to stare back at us from the abyss. The truth is often ugly. It is why people believe lies. Deception offers them something beautiful. The creature that was and wasn't Argyltal continued its recitation. If you're looking for a way to get into Warhammer, I am gonna talk more about the tabletop games, because I totally forgot about one-page rules. Totally forgot, because I am very much into a different type of game. But if you're not ready for the games, get into the books. I do have to let you know, I mean, they go places. I mean, this book here, I'm in the first half still. You get back to this part, it gets weird. It gets crazy. But fiction is so beautiful because it is a perfect mirror of the society we've created. In fiction, we are allowed to express that outwardly, which we would keep in our heads and not say. Sometimes we need to examine the things we've created and look at them plainly and wonder, have we done the right thing? Fiction is at its best when it makes us reconsider our own reality and even look for ways to make our reality better. What a story to explore during this Christmas season. We will finish off this part of Lorgar's story as we close out the holiday season on next week's Warhammer Wednesday. And then we're going to get back into the models for a while before I pick up with Fabius Bile, because I got to finish the book before I read from it some more. And I got another novel that I want to get into as well, Minka-esque. I'm super excited about that one. So I got a couple weeks off for the holidays. I am excited to paint. I'm excited to, and birthday as well, December baby. I'm excited to paint. I'm excited to read. I'm excited to relax, get some things put together. I've started my Necron flyers to play Aeronautica with some folks, so all that's great. And today, the day I'm recording this anyway, it's not the day it's going up, but I hit 1,000 subscribers, and I have to say thank you. Once the channel gets to the point of monetization, since it looks like that's actually possible now, I never thought that was going to happen. I'm just out here cutting up, having a good time, and I'll continue to do that. That's when I want to start doing things to reward all of you as far as giving out things. And y'all have given me some great suggestions, and I super appreciate it, especially since in our house we 3D print. I can 100% get some STLs of Transformers to print or other properties out there. And I've gotten some good suggestions on other properties I might want to check out as I continue to expand the types of things I talk about on the channel. But thank you. I mean, I know 1,000 subscribers in the YouTube verse is real small, but to this person, it's real big. And I wouldn't have subscribers if you didn't watch my videos. So I appreciate that. Thank you for being here, and thank you for putting up with me, because I don't do a whole lot of fancy stuff. I do have the ability to edit. I have Adobe. I know how to edit. I could be a little Tarkin cartoon or anything like that, but that's not what I do. It's not me. It's not authentic to myself. I may start doing more heavily edited videos at some point, like when I want to talk about things. Like I still want to do Ruyi's Royal Love in the Palace, but I want to show stuff. You know, I still want to do anime reviews, but I haven't cracked the formula on how you do those and not get hand slapped by the algorithm as far as like someone yanking the stuff down. Like I see other creators who have cracked the code. I have not cracked the code yet. And it might be arbitrary for all I know. I might not be important enough for them to let me get away with it. So we'll see. But I really appreciate all of you who are new to the channel, who have been around since I started doing my channel, and who are helping me grow. And I cannot wait to be able to start doing things to reward the loyalty and support. If nobody else tells you this holiday season, look at me in my eyeballs. Look at me. Look, I'm going to look direct at the camera. You matter. You matter to me. Thank you for being here. And I hope you have a safe and happy holiday season. Please do not look into the eye of terror and become possessed by a chaos god. That's bad. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.